All right, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Welcome and welcome to our broadcast. We are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. As always, this is Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We have a great news for you. We have a brand new program that is starting today, and you are one of the lucky ones to be here as we begin the brand new program here at Focus on Liberia called Roundtable Africa. The program will be explained to you in a little bit. We have our partner here, Mr. Sekou Kelleh, who will be the host of this program, and he will be hosting this program along with Mr. Edward Amara, who is our West African correspondent based in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Edward should be here by now, but there is an issue with connection there in Sierra Leone. We are doing all we can as we start the show. And so welcome, hit the share button, let's get started. I will now welcome the host of this program, Mr. Sekou Kelleh. Mr. Sekou Kelleh, welcome to Focus on Liberia. I'm happy to welcome you to your program, Roundtable Africa. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Brother Sonny C. It's a pleasure, and I'm really grateful to Focus on Liberia and all your teams. And I also am grateful to the organizers of this program. We are very happy, and we've been planning this back doors for the past few months. And we are happy that this program has actually come to life. And Roundtable Africa is going to be very interesting. And we hope our people will listen attentively so we all share ideas and learn how to build the future of our country and our continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. We are so delighted that you are joining the Focus on Liberia family for a special program called Roundtable Africa. Your partner, Edward Amara, has just joined us. He's based in Freetown, Sierra Leone. He is our West African correspondent. He will be or is the co-host of Roundtable Africa. Hey, Mr. Amara, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Welcome to Roundtable Africa. We are happy to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the initial noise, our parts of the world. Anyway, I'm really happy. This is a very fantastic program, and I think it is high time we Africans see ourselves as Africans. We try to dialogue on things that have been far away from Africa. Looking at our continent, I believe Africa is just like a country because of our racial connection, our cultural integration, and we will watch ourselves in a typical African setting. So having a type of program like this that involves a typical African mentality and that actually show the origin of Africa, and I think it's a laudable move, and this program is going to be enjoyable and everybody will like watching the program. I believe that as we carry on, everything is going to be fantastic and the world may continue to listen to Africa. We know all Africans are connected in one or two ways. So it is high time Africans build themselves as one, and let us forget about any mentality that have divided us for quite a long time. So I'm really, really happy.
Edward Amara, based in Freetown, Sierra Leone. He is Focus on Liberia West African correspondent. He is the co-host of this brand new program called Roundtable Africa. Mr. Sekou Kelleh is here. Sekou, you've been here many times. You are family to this network, but now you have a slot here, to host this program called Roundtable Africa. People listening to you now, what kind of program is this? Can you give an overview, at least for not 5 minutes, but 1 minute, please?
Okay. Once again, thank you. So the Roundtable Africa basically is about African ideology and African philosophy in this 21st century. Mm-hmm. What is the African ideology and what is their philosophy towards development, towards social organization, towards economic politics? So where have we been and where are we today? What is the future? So these are important questions that every conscious being or society will ask themselves, that where did we come from and where are we right now and what does the future hold for us? So we believe that Roundtable Africa will go deep down into history and dig out some of the achievement of Africans and what did the founding fathers of modern Africa, what did they think that Africa should become? So where are we today? How do we think we are making progress? What is the trajectory that we are on? We want to evaluate that. Then we want to look at the future. What paradigm should the younger generation follow? What should they be doing right now in order to achieve this goal? These are some of the things Roundtable Africa will be discussing.
Thank you so very much. And Edward, you just listening to Sekou. Can you please add to what he just said? We want to know the goal of this Roundtable Africa. What can you add to what he just said?
Just to add, just to make an addendum to what he said, I think when we say Africa, we regard ourselves as one, and we believe that Africa should be like an integrated society. And we believe that even when our founding fathers of Africa, as a continent, like when we say Pan-Africanism, we believe that for Africa to progress economically, politically, and for our philosophy to be a harmonized one, it is high time we started thinking at one. So Roundtable Africa will help to watch as Sierra Leoneans, Liberians, Guineans, irrespective of your colonial connection, for us to see ourselves as one, to believe that to change Africa, we need to think in the African way. We need to be our brothers and sisters as one. We should forget about being the statehood or wheresoever country that you are coming from. So Roundtable Africa will help even those of you guys who are in the diaspora to know that if you're a Senegalese, you're a Ghanaian, you're a Liberian, you're a Sierra Leonean, a Mozambican, you will realize that Africa is Africa, and when people watch at you, they will definitely identify you about Africa. Immediately, what Roundtable is actually trying to do, if you spot somebody who is an African, you may not even relate that person to his or her country or origin. The best thing that you relate that person to, that this is an African. So it means Africans are one. So that is what Roundtable Africa want to do.
Thank you so very much. The stage is set, and folks, our topic for today is Pan-Africanism, the last hope for Africa. This is the topic these two intelligent and brilliant minds of Africa have decided to discuss. And again, let me remind you, they will be the host and co-host of this program, Roundtable Africa, here at Focus on Liberia. Mr. Kelleh, let's get started. And our topic, what is Pan-Africanism? So we want to know, what is Pan-Africanism? Get us started.
Thank you very much. I know we've all heard of Pan-Africanism, even if you are in elementary school or secondary school, somehow you came across the word or you heard it on television or somewhere that people talk about Pan-Africanism. What does it really mean? So I would define it this way. Pan-Africanism is an ideology and is a philosophy. So it's an ideology and a philosophy. As an ideology, Pan-Africanism is a humanist ideology that says that it is a people movement against all form of injustice and oppression of Africans and African descendants. And they reaffirm the unification of African people. So Pan-Africanism ideology is a people's movement, that Africans or African descendants, to reaffirm their unity and to stand against imperialism and exploitation. It's very important to understand that. So there are three things we can take from the definition. One is a people's movement, is people-centered. I mean, whatever Pan-Africanism stands for, people have to be the center, the emancipation of people, the salvation of people, taking people out of poverty, taking people out of oppression. That's the first thing. The second thing is the shared identity of African and African descendants. So the ancestors who formed this philosophy, this ideology, they discovered that the African had an identity problem beginning with the 18th century to the 19th century. Coming out of slavery, colonialism was falling, there was a lot of going on. So there was no one voice. There was division. So they needed a shared identity based on historical consciousness, that we have a shared identity that go beyond our tribes, that go beyond our diaspora, that go beyond our nationality, our present citizen or nationality as Americans or Brazilian or whatever. We have a shared identity that go back to the empires in Africa, 5,000 years back, 3,000 years back, that this shared identity is what we should stand upon to build a new future. So it's people-centered as an ideology, and it's about shared identity. As a philosophy, Pan-Africanism philosophy, whenever we talk about philosophy, we talk about the rational explanation about human relationship with nature. How do we interpret nature? What is life? So Pan-Africanism approach, philosophical approach to life is that we have to follow a materialistic philosophy, not materialism, materialistic philosophy, which is that the Pan-African ideas can never be realized until we have a United States of Africa. We have economic, politics, social philosophy of development, but these ideas can never come to pass until there is a United States of Africa, either on the continental level or on a Black African sub-Saharan level. We must have a super state that will be able to put the Pan-African idea into motion and into effect that will bring about the emancipation of Black people as a collective.
Thank you so very much. Let's come to you, Mr. Edward Amara. You know, we are discussing Pan-Africanism, the last hope for Africa, and specifically we are on the history now of Pan-Africanism. And I asked the question, what is Pan-Africanism? You know, what it all involves. What are the things that are, you know, the embodiment of Pan-Africanism? What can you share with us?
Well, thank you very much. As my colleague just brilliantly explained, when we talk about Pan-Africanism, we talk about the African solidarity. We mean that Africans are not only connected by common history, but have a common destiny. Africans need to see themselves as Africans. They need to think at once. You know, each and every country in Africa share a common history. And all of us, we are once under suppression. We are once colonized, and foreign powers like the Europeans, the Americans, and other countries impose their belief on us. So Pan-African movement is all human-centered, and they believe that for Africans to change our societal setting, for all to have a strong economic and political development and forget about relying on the other world, we need to come together as Africans. We think as Africans, we behave as African, and we solve our problems into the African mentality. You know, before the driving point of Pan-Africanism, there is a common belief that all Africans, most of us, we are once enslaved. If you watch at Sierra Leone was one colonized. You watch at Guinea was one colonized. You watch at Zimbabwe was one colonized. Each and every country, check out South Africa was one under the apartheid rule by some of the Boers, the British, and other people. So all of us went under suppression. Does that tell you that Africa do not only share a common history, but also share a common destiny, and we also have gone under suppression, and we have some imperialists who impose their rule on us. So Pan-African is just a type of movement that Africans need to see themselves as one. We need to observe ourselves as brothers and sisters, and we reorganize our human resources. We have a single philosophy, a single ideology that should be able to drive Africa. That is why when you see all the history about Pan-Africanism, just talking about African unionism, where we may have the North Africans, irrespective of their Arab, because the race over there, I see the South African, the East African, the West Africans. We need to harmonize ourselves, and we need to see ourselves as a United States of Africa. Only by then we may have an African that will survive, an African that will be self-reliant, an African that will be able to move forward, an African that will stand and fight against any type of foreign aggression. Pan-Africanism actually believe that Africans should just fight for a single goal, that we all belong to the same race, and we are normally identified by our continent. And if we have been identified by our continent, then let all of us think as Africans instead of trying to bring any division. And you know, we are carefully divided by the colonial powers. Some Sierra Leoneans are seeing themselves as British related. Some Liberians are seeing themselves so related to America. If you check to Guinea, they will see themselves so related to the French. So Pan-Africanism just moved that we are not going to keep identifying ourselves by people who once colonized us, who once imposed their leadership on us. We need to stay in Africa and move this continent, because most of these people, Pan-Africanists actually move to stop the exploitation that has actually took place in Africa for quite a long time. If that have taken place, then let Pan-Africanism come together, try to manage Africa into the African way and drive away colonial power. That is why all about Pan-Africanism was bringing Africans together and stop the slave trade movement that was going on to make Africa an independent continent.
Thank you so very much. Again, folks in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia. This is our brand new program, Roundtable Africa, and this program will be hosted by Mr. Sekou Kelleh, as it's him right there, and also will be co-hosted by Mr. Edward Amara, based in Freetown, Sierra Leone, who is our West African correspondent based in that West African country. I'm Anthony C. Trying to partner with these guys on their brand new show, Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia, brand new program, Roundtable Africa, right here. You can't find it anywhere else. This is Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Gentlemen, brilliant expose there by both of you on the first question, what is Pan-Africanism? Now, this is my second question. What started Pan-Africanism and why was it necessary? Let me start with you again, Mr. Kelleh.
Thank you very much, Brother C. I will begin with the historical background here to be able to give a proper understanding. Okay. In 1804, there was a revolution in Haiti. If everybody knew about Haiti. 1804, there was a revolution in Haiti. The black slaves the black people that were taken out of Africa and enslaved in the Caribbean, they got to a point where they had to resist. For the first time in history, black people rose up against Napoleon's army and defeated him, defeated the French and the Portuguese, and declared Haiti as the first free black nation on earth. So Haiti did a remarkable job by driving away, first time for slaves to emancipate themselves in a confrontation, in a war, no dialogue. They fought and defeated the Europeans and declared Haiti as a republic. That revolution went abroad, the news traveled abroad to the Americas and all over the continent, that look, black people, we can do this. When we stand together, because those slaves that fought in Haiti, they were from different backgrounds. Some came from Jamaica, some came from other places. They joined forces together and said, look, this is freedom or death. We have to free ourselves. And they got Haiti free. From 1804 downward, the business of slavery began to fail all over. Europeans discovered that they could no longer hold people as slaves. So they were thinking, what's the way out? So moving toward the 19th century, Europeans discovered that slavery and colonialism was going to fall. So they began to justify, because they know that at the end of the day, slavery is not going to hold. So they began to write books that justify slavery. So the first thing they started teaching university was that the black man was inferior, that he was in fact equivalent to a monkey, that we do not have the intellectual capacity to be integrated into civilization. That was the reason why they colonized us, and that was the reason why they enslaved us. So the black intellectuals that were coming out in the 19th century, going to school, reading these books, they said, look, if we don't turn this information around, we don't unite African people, we might be perpetually remain slaves, and we might be controlled by these people. So Africans, intellectuals from the 19th century coming down, they began to look for common identity, to restore the African identity. Say, we are not monkeys. We are not just a group of tribes. We have a history. We have ancient Egypt. We've got Ethiopia. We've got a lot of civilization, Mali, Ouagadougou Empire. We come from great kings. We built empires. We were people that brought civilization. We wrote mathematics. We have mathematics. We have writings. So we are not a people without history. And our history did not begin with slavery. Those are the arguments that set the space for Pan-Africanism. It was to restore the dignity of the black man in the world that was regarded as a half human in the white man ideology.
Thank you so very much. Let me bring my Man, Edward Amara. And Edward, this is the question that I have for you. You can chime in on the question your partner answered there, but this is my question. How is Pan-Africanism being viewed in today's world? Positively or negatively?
I think up to now, Pan-Africanism is being viewed positively because when you watch at the typical African setting, each time we see a disintegrated society, a society that is so corrupt that has lost its value and heading into the Western Hemisphere way, and who's when you watch at the Africans who are actually suffering because of lost ideology, because of lost identity, because we do not have a constructive and well-defined political affairs, we tend to believe that we have lost the value of Africa. Because when you see the first political fathers of Africa, you talk about like Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, you think about Kenneth Kaunda, who was actually identified as a Malawian, but all we know, he actually fought assiduously to ensure that Zambia is being freed. You talk about Leopold Senghor of Senegal. We have a lot of forefathers of Africa who actually believe that Africans should be liberated. So up to now, when we watch at the African continent, we believe that if those founding fathers mentality of the OAU, by then Organization of African Unity, has actually survived. When you watch about the goals of the OAU, all of the goals about the OAU was to set Africa as a united continent. Because as I said initially, all African countries have a simple history. They have a common history when we relate ourselves to. All of us, we are once enslaved. A white man, as he rightly said, a black man was once linked to an inferior animal like a monkey. And the white people clearly stated that Africa was a kind of uncivilized country. We are illiterate. We are not religious. So they want to colonize Africa to ensure that we Africans actually are being civilized. We are being liberated from all the shackles of bad leadership. But when you watch at it, before this time, Africa was actually living as an independent continent. So up to now, we nowadays who are living, we believe that Africa has simply lost its ideology. We are undertaking this type of negative consequences because our founding fathers' mentalities, we are not actually followed. Because when you watch at the OAU that was forming Addis Ababa, everything that it was being formed for was to unite Africa, to fight for African sovereignty, to ensure that even those who are still suffering from colonization, they should actually be liberated, to fight for countries like South Africa who are actually struggling, and to even help peoples like Zimbabwe who took up arms ammunition against colonial power. So still up to now, when the typical African man, except those of us who may not have read, but if anybody who has read history, you know about our typical African background, you will understand that the layman today still value the Pan-Africanism movement. That is why they always set the example of those founding fathers of the OAU, or those who actually found the Pan-Africanist movement as positive leaders. And if you watch like Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, who is actually very close to us in Sierra Leone,
and we'll get to the leaders and actors of Pan-Africanism. Go ahead.
So positive. We are positive. Our generation is positive about the Pan-Africanism movement. We are positive.
Mr. Kelleh, anything you want to chime in on the same question about whether or not Pan-Africanism is being viewed negatively or positively? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Pan-Africanism is viewed positively. It remained the only dialogue since the independence of Africa, the only discussion that have not left the table. Pan-Africanism has produced the African Union that we have, Organization of African Unity. So whenever leaders meet in Addis Ababa, they are re-echoing the spirit of Pan-Africanism. They are telling you that Pan-Africanism is well and alive, but we are trying, people are just trying to avoid it. But it remains the only elephant in the room that must be addressed. And until Pan-Africanism is giving its rightful place in the African governance, in African politics, in African economics, there is no way forward. And I believe the younger generation is looking towards Pan-Africanism more than ever before.
Thank you so very much, folks in cyberspace. You are watching Focus on Liberia on its brand new program here called Roundtable Africa. And I am telling you, this program is really stimulating. On the screen is our co-host, or the co-host for this program. That is Mr. Edward Amara, based in Freetown, Sierra Leone. He is Focused on Liberia West African correspondent. And also, all the way in Canada is Mr. Sekou Kelleh, who will be the host of this program, Roundtable Africa. This is where you want to be every Wednesday. 1 p.m. Eastern Time, live here at Focus on Liberia for Roundtable Africa, where Africans talk about Africa. You do not want to miss it. Gentlemen, let's make progress here. Again, folks who are just joining us, you can send in your comments. Let us know how the conversation is going. Sometime later, we will be able to read your comments. Gentlemen, let's move to the next segment of this conversation. You know, everything must start with somebody. Who are the fathers and mothers of Pan-Africanism? Let's start with you, Mr. Kelleh.
Yeah, thank you very much. Up till now, like every discussion in the society, there is a discussion. There are people who have their own list. There are people who know who have their own date of when they want to begin the chronology of their Pan-African leaders. So for me, usually I begin with Anteno Firme of Haiti. Some people like to begin with Marcus Garvey. Some like to begin with Wilmer Blyden. But I will begin with Anteno Firme and give you some of the list very quickly. Anteno Firme in the 1800s was the first Black man to go and debunk the Eurocentric idea that the African was inherently inferior, that the African was equal to a monkey. The anthropologists have proven beyond every reason.
Is that him on the screen there?
No, this is Marcus Garvey and this is Haile Selassie. Anteno Firme is not yet, but these two people, I will also mention these people very shortly.
All right, go ahead then.
Yeah, Anteno Firme, he wrote a book titled The Equality of Races, because there was a book in Europe that was taught in university. It was written by a French anthropologist called Gobineau, and the book is titled The Inégalité des Races, that is the inequality of races. In that book, the man demonstrated that God created human beings. We are all humans, but there is a pyramid. There is hierarchy of races. That the white man with the blue eyes and the blonde hair is the perfect human being on the scale, on the ladder, that God made a perfect human being. Next to him is the red Italian and the other red white people with the black hair. And then next to that is the Asian yellow people. Then next to that is what they call the Hamites. They got that from the Bible. That is the black African who are like Ethiopians and Somalians with a longer nose and longer hair. They call those Hamites. They said those ones are more intelligent. Then we in West Africa, other places, they call all the Negro Bantu. They said those are the last on the human scale of evolution, that they have not evolved intellectually, they have not evolved culturally, and they are inherently inferior. To even give them a nation to govern is a waste of time, that they will never evolve to a period where they can be a prosperous nation. That the best thing for a Negro is to make him work on the farm, is to enslave him, then give him a lot of music to dance and eat food and have a lot of sex. That's the perfect life that a Negro should live. So Anteno Firme went to Paris to debunk that in one of the greatest universities in Paris. When he did his demonstration scientifically, that a black man is the first Homo sapiens sapien, that he is equal, that all humans are equal intellectually, that our development in society just depends on our material evolution. It has nothing to do with our intellectual capacity. So he debunked that theory. From that day on, there was a new discussion that all humans are equal. So the first person to actually bring that on the table was that man. From there, the modern Pan-Africanism actually started with W.E. Du Bois. Du Bois and Wilmer Blyden from Liberia. So Edward Wilmer Blyden that you see in the middle there, Wilmer Blyden started writing. He wrote a book called Islam, Christianity, and the Soul of Black People, where he explained how Black people have actually been mentally enslaved, that there is a need to bring Black people back to their consciousness, reconnect them to their ancestral history, reconnect them to their classical path, so that they can have the mental capability to challenge the white man. That if you leave them following the Eurocentric idea, they will always believe that they are inferior. So he started the idea. Later, it was picked up by a lot of scholars like W.E. Du Bois The Marcus Garvey is one of the greatest one that everybody know. Marcus Garvey actually was the one that actually explained the philosophy itself. He said, Africa for the Africans, that there must be a United States of Africa that will stand against neo-colonialism and colonialism, because the world has been divided, and economically the world is divided on race level. The white people, their economy is based on race. The Asians, their economic is based on race. You see the Chinese. That if black people, if we divide into tribes, into these little groups, we will remain fragile, and we will not be able to challenge the rest of the people on the dinner table of civilization. That we have a lot in common, and there is a need for us to sit around the same table. But the greatest of all that is well known today as the father of Pan-Africanism is Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah, who wrote a book called Consciencism. The book is there called Consciencism. So Kwame Nkrumah was inspired by Marcus Garvey. He said, the philosophy and the opinions of Marcus Garvey is what has really inspired me. I have read a lot of books in my life, but the book, the opinion, and the philosophy of Marcus Garvey is what inspired me. So Kwame Nkrumah said, Africa must unite now, not tomorrow. We must do it now, that our future depends on it. Our fate depends on it. Our destiny depends on it. That these imaginary borders that were created, they will only, all our politics will be about tribal division. We will never be able to develop nationalism above tribalism in order to build a greater civilization. So the division of our nation into these small states is actually against us. That the only way forward is the United States of Africa. So Kwame Nkrumah remained the greatest, the king of Pan-Africanism today. And Marcus Garvey is regarded as the first president of the future United States of Africa.
Thank you so very much, Sekou Kelleh, who will be the host of this program, Roundtable Africa, where we will talk issues of Africa. Mr. Edward Amara, I want you to chip in here, but let me read something for you. And this is a quote from Marcus Garvey. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without a root. Tell me what these founders of Pan-Africanism were thinking. And I mean, I listened to the quote there, I'm like, this man must be a man of knowledge. Your time.
Absolutely. You know, you philosophically, you cannot think about Africa differently. But unfortunately, because Africans, we are not carefully educated on their origin, how they came to be Africa, so they lost their identity. So if you do not have the knowledge to know about your origin, you tend to fight against each other. I think when you watch at the African ideology, all about Pan-Africanism, what our forefathers were trying to do was to ensure that Africans view themselves as one. But you cannot view yourself as one people if you do not have the knowledge about your origin. Because when you lost the knowledge about your origin as African, you are definitely going to lose your identity. You may not tend to focus on one thing. That was why when our founding fathers came together, they believed that the first thing that Africa need to do is to first share our knowledge. How did we come to be Africans? And what are the common ideologies that Africans need to look and focus themselves on? That is why when they came, they said, we are all Africans, we share the same culture, we have the same historical background, and we have the same suppression. And all of us are coming from Africa. Irrespective of how many years he may take in the Americas, when the white man watch you, he still regard you as an African. And if you are going to be intimidated, harassed, neither torture, the first thing that they are going to identify you for them to inflict punishment on you was because you are coming from the continent of Africa, you have the same race, and you have the same culture. So that is why they had wanted to educate, inform, and carefully take action around themselves. So when you watch out this quotation, the quotation was just trying to ensure that Africans think in that one-way direction instead of us trying to have a divided action in trying to take actions that may fortify and protect Africa economically, politically, in whatsoever ideology. So that's why Africans came together to ensure that we have adequate, proper education on how the movement is to be taken from one stage to another.
Thank you so very much.
I would like to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So like my brother brilliantly explained, the quotes from Marcus Garvey there is very, very crucial. It's very important to take note of it. One of the greatest scholars of Pan-Africanism also is Sheikh Anta Diop. And he said there are three factors that define an identity. Three important factors. One, the historical factor. A historical consciousness. Where did I come from? Who am I? Is the first factor that defines identity. And what happened to most Africans is that our historical consciousness has been limited to our local history. So the colonial school taught us that if you are a Kra or Mende or Kisi, your history is limited to being Kra, Mende, Kisi, Gola, and what have you. No, that is your local history. What's your classical history? What's the origin of that ethnic group? So you have to go back 3,000 to 4,000 years so that you will be able to know how many people you are related to. So the African American, for example, their local historical consciousness will limit them to slavery, and then they are modern American. But they have to go back some thousands of years to bring themselves back to Africa to know that their history did not begin with slavery. So we too, we should not see ourselves that our history begin with our modern tribes. We can go back and see that these tribes, some of them did not exist 1,000 years back. We were just one group. So historical factor is one important. The second thing is the psychological factor. The psychological factor in identity is, how do you view yourself? How does the Black man view himself when he stands in a group of white people? Does he feel confident, or does he feel inferior? Because many books that he read in schools, they said that the most smartest people in history have been white people. Isaac Newton, Einstein, and this. Where are the Einstein and Isaac Newton of Black people? You said my Black people answer, when you remember Black people, all you think about is slavery and those who have been worshiping voodoo. We have done nothing. So that inferiority that we got from the Western school, when we start in the midst of white people, we feel that we can make it. We say that, well, our ancestors did nothing. So the psychological factor is what Pan-Africanism says you have to restore in the identity of a Black man. We have to go back to ancient Egypt, where we built pyramids, where we started mathematics, where we started geometry, where Europe was Europeans were living in caves. There was no Greece, there was no Rome. We have to go back to Kush, where we started, and there was no civilization anywhere around the world. We have to go back to Mali and Ouagadougou Empire. We have to go back to Ghana Empire, where we built great civilization even before the 14th century. This is where we got our pride from. The psychological factor is very important in identity. Then the third one is the linguistic factor. The language is the vehicle of culture. We have little languages we got tribes that divide us. Okay, that's fine, but can we now grow to a level to look for continental language? Can we grow to a level and develop a regional language? Because we are now at a point where people think in order for you to be smart is to be fluent in a European language. In order for you to be scientific, you have to speak a European language. That's not true for the Chinese. That's not true for the Indians, who told us that our 1,000 languages on the continent is not able to explain scientific ideas. Who told us that? So we have to work on these three: the psychological factor, the historical factor, and the linguistic factor of identity. And that's what Marcus Garvey said, those people who don't know their roots. If you don't go back to your roots, you don't have history. You need to return to that root. And that's what Pan-Africanism is doing to the Black intelligentsia.
Mr. Kelleh, let me ask a question on the last segment you just touched on, the language aspect of it. Did the forefathers or the fathers of Pan-Africanism set the foundation for us to come to terms with the issue of language? It's a powerful human tool, if I can pull it that way. Like you brilliantly explained, we are relying on English to explain what we're learning for us to be viewed as educated or smart. And you said the Indians, that is not the case. They can speak their language, even though they speak English. The same thing can be said about the Chinese. But for Africa, it's different. The forefathers set that foundation that, look, can we have a common language here? If not the entire Africa, maybe by region, like you suggested, or maybe in the country itself. We don't have it. I don't think we have a common language in Liberia other than English. It's European.
Yes. I think they did to a certain extent, and I will explain. There's a book there that I sent you called Back to the Roots by Nyerere. Nyerere was the first president of Tanzania. When he got to his country, Tanzania were divided into a lot of tribes. Returned to the source, to America Cabral. Okay, this is from Cabral. But Nyerere actually went to Tanzania and discovered that there are so many tribes, and he wants to build a Tanzania of the future. How can he do that with all these languages? So he brought about a system called Ujamaa. The Ujamaa means community. It's an African system of democracy. So he used that and then changed the educational system to a level. They picked one language called Swahili and decided to develop the language. Till today, as I speak to you, the people in Tanzania, they don't even know each other tribe, even though they belong to the same tribe, but everybody speaks Swahili. The president of the nation, nobody knows his tribe. If you ask them right now, what's the tribe of the current president of Tanzania? Tanzanians don't know. They only know that he speaks Swahili. So it was a brilliant way he did it without using one tribe to suppress the other. We had a president in Liberia who wanted to try it with Kelleh, but it failed because of the system he used. Now, what did the Pan-African leaders say about this? They said that we cannot say we will put one language above the other people and oppress them. That's not what we want to do. We want to use a scientific method. First of all, let's identify what's the classical language of Africa. What language in the African continent was written on paper before now? Let's forget Arabic. Arabic is not an African language, even though we have Arabs on the continent who came in the 7th century. But an African language, linguistically speaking, that was written down on paper before the white man came. And the language we have is the Medu nature of Kush and Kemet, that is between Sudan and Egypt, that was spoken by the pharaohs. It's written on paper. And that language today, a scholar called Theophilo Benga, Pan-Africanist, was able to find out that over 500 African languages are attached to that language. They almost share the same vocabulary. So he said, what we need to do is to find a continental language first, then use that classical language to supplement the vocabulary that are missing. Some scientific words that we don't have, we can get it from the European did that. Most of the words we use in English are not English words. Some of them are German, some of them are taken from Greek, some of them are taken from Latin. So you build a language, you supplement where the vocabulary is missing, you go to the classical source. If I say Homo sapiens sapien, I'm not speaking English. Homo in Latin means human being, sapiens means wise, a wise man. But they could have used English and say wise man, but they want to stick it back to the source to show you that it's a classical word. So they say Homo sapiens sapien. We can go back to our classical source and use vocabulary that are missing. We use our classical language and replace them. So there will be first a continental language. Then there will be regional languages, West Africa. Then there will be local languages. So we are not going to say your tribe is eliminated, no. But we look for a language that we know that scientifically that language will be connected to the classical language. Then we use it to promote academics. All people, you speak your language quite okay. Like India has 600 languages, but they have Hindu.
Thank you. I mean, I want you to continue, but we still have some questions. Yeah. Folks in cyberspace, this is Focus on Liberia, a brand new program here called Roundtable Africa. But in today's edition, which is the debut of this program here, Focus on Liberia, we are talking Pan-Africanism, the last hope for Africa. The host and co-host of this program, Mr. Sekou Kelleh, and Mr. Edward Amara. This is Mr. Sekou Kelleh right here, and Mr. Edward Amara, who is in Freetown, Sierra Leone. My name is Anthony Sie, and I am partnering with them in this first edition of their program, Roundtable Africa. Edward, let me come to you on language again. In Liberia, we're speaking English. You go next door to Ivory Coast, they're speaking French as their general language. Next door to Guinea is the same. You come to our neighbor Freetown or Sierra Leone, where you are, they're speaking English. And I know in Sierra Leone there is, what's it called, the Creole. I like to listen to it. How is the issue of language a disadvantage? And at the same time, an advantage for Africa, should we be united on a single language, locally?
I think he just brilliantly explained, but to throw some light on it, when you watch at Africa as a continent, before the arrival of the Europeans into our country or into our continent, Africa used to identify themselves with various language and have regions that have a kind of dominated language. If you watch at the Horn of Africa, the Kiswahili is a dominated language over there. And the best way for you to unify the East, the Horn of Africa, is to ensure that people speak the same language. But the colonialists during the 19th century, they were so careful enough. They knew that the best way to divide Africa is first to divide our historical background and to infect the continent, introduce it to different type of language. That is just infection. Infecting the continent is trying to introduce the continent into different.
Oh, please don't do that. Don't do that, Edward. I hope your connection will get better.
Immediately change the by introducing different language to it. So language is definitely a barrier, but you must understand that Africans are actually absolutely intelligent, because if we are not intelligent, we may not be able to communicate into the white man language when our mother tongue is definitely not the white man's language. And we have the mentality of developing ourselves. But when they came into Africa, the best way for them to develop Africa, they introduced 3 types of education. They call it essential education. They teach you how to read and write, and also be able to interpret figure, to write figure. That was more or less a server education. The server education was only meant to benefit the Europeans instead of us. So technical education was definitely not introduced into Africa, and the best way they could do was to divide Africa through language barrier. As you rightly said, we have Portuguese Guinea today, we have British West Africa, we have French West Africa countries. And as long as we have a change into our language, the linguistic factor is changed, our education and status also become changed. The philosophy of the French is quite different from that of the philosophy of the British. When you watch at the typical American society setting, the way how education is being controlled and monitored in Liberia or in America, that is not how education is being controlled and monitored into Britain. And Britain actually colonized British. We have a lot of countries who speak British language, as I am speaking here. And when you watch at it, as long as the American way have the different way to control their educational system, and the British also control their educational system different, now they came into Africa. That is why all of us have a strong link with the British education. And those who were actually colonized by the French, they have a strong link with the French education. And you cannot change Africa without first thinking philosophically straight, and we have a common goal together. So the language is a very great barrier, but however, it can be solved, because we have already identified ourselves as a continent and also as African. I think the best way is to eliminate the language barrier. You have the most popular, like if you watch like in the Horn of Africa, as I rightly said, the Kiswahili, that was why they introduced. If you watch at the side, they try to make the Kiswahili to be one of the official language. That is why you go into the Horn of Africa, almost everybody within that Horn of Africa, they speak the Kiswahili. When you come into West Africa here, you may see that out of the 16 countries into West Africa you have here, only 5 actually speak English speaking West African countries. 4 are British. 1 was actually have some affiliation. Of course, Liberia have some. Although Liberia was not officially colonized, but we all recognize it to be a colony of Liberia. So the best way for us to do is to sit down and see what is the common factor. But we have other languages that are actually dominating into West Africa here that can actually be used as the official language. But as long as we have a change into the linguistic factors, there is always going to be change into the mentality. So we are very cunning, and the type of education that they introduced here has actually helped to divide Africa, because technical education was not introduced into our own continent. What they did, they only introduced the essential education. The essential education was meant to serve them. That is why up to now, because of that change of language factor, our education and status have been changed, and we think differently, because a British man watches things different. The way the French man believes in solving problems, that is not how the British man believes in solving problems. So I think language is a serious barrier. But our founding fathers and a current leadership always know that there is still a problem. And the best way to start to unify Africa is for us to have a commonality in the way, which language are we going to be adopted, which language is going to be adopted as the official language. And from there we can move. Though, because that is the best way, if we can come together and share our ideology into a common way that you and I may be able to understand ourselves, then we can keep up and have a fantastic goal.
Thank you so very much, Edward Amara there in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Gentlemen, let's come to the final segment, the contribution of the founding fathers of Pan-Africanism, and we can also include the contribution of some leading Pan-Africanists. All right, let's start with their political contribution. You come in, Mr.
The
Sekou
sound is
Kelleh.
low here.
Huh?
Your sound is low.
Well, apparently somebody call you. You can leave and come right back. I will correct that. So Sekou, let's talk about their contribution. The fathers of Pan-Africanism. Let's start with their political contribution.
Yes. So I will take you through the 6 important Pan-African conventions and what they contributed to modern African societies. From 1919 until 1945, we had 6 Pan-African conventions. And these conventions were powerful. And it's very important for Africans to know that. The first convention was in 1919, organized by W.E. Du Bois. By then, we have the League of Nations. There was no United Nations. So it's important to understand what was happening in 1919. The Jim Crow law in America were oppressing Black people. There was an apartheid system in America where Black and white don't use the same toilet, and Black and white don't go to the same church. Black and white don't eat in the same restaurant. At that same time, the Africans on the continent were under deep colonial rule. They could not say the French assimilation system was going on. Africans were almost doing what the French called travail forcé, working by force for the French. A Black man was not regarded anywhere in the world as a respectable citizen. This was the first time the Pan-African Convention was called. And what did they do? There was something they called the manifesto. In that manifesto, they charged the British colonial rule and the French colonial rule on the continent to treat the Black people with respect in their home country. They warned that in order for war not to start, they have to respect the Black man in his homeland. And America also had to stop the segregation. So these conventions were submitted to the League of Nations. That gave birth to American civil rights movement that we all know today. The last convention, the Pan-African Convention, that happened in 1945 in Manchester. It was very, very important because almost 100 African leaders attended that convention. Among them were Kwame Nkrumah, who was not yet president at that time. Nyerere, who was not president at that time. Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria was also there. He was not president at that time. Jomo Kenyatta was also there. All these leaders were invited and were there in 1945. It was just after World War II. And there, the African Convention, they decided that colonial rule has to end in Africa. The Africans have to stand up and say goodbye to colonial rule. And there must be total liberation and independence of Africa. That was where Kwame Nkrumah and others got their inspiration from. Then when they came back on the continent, they said, freedom now, not tomorrow. That's why when Ghana got its independence in 1957, Kwame Nkrumah said, the independence of Ghana is meaningless until the total liberation of Africa. Why? Because that was the resolution at the convention. So, secondly, Pan-African leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, being inspired by Marcus Garvey and Du Bois, formed the Organization of African Unity, which today we are all enjoying, that is in Addis Ababa. The Pan-African leaders also formed what we call the frontline states. These frontline states were responsible to confront the apartheid regime in South Africa, fought them foot to foot until the white people were defeated in South Africa and Mandela became president. They put in their resources, they gave soldiers, they gave their everything they have to give. They boycotted South Africa and made sure that the white minority were defeated and the Black majority take over in South Africa. So modern Africa that we have is a fruit and product of Pan-African leadership.
Thank you so very much. I'll come to you, Mr. Edward Amara. We're talking about the contribution of the forefathers or the fathers of Pan-Africanism. Politically, and if you can chime in economically, what contribution that they make for the progress of Africa that you want to share with us?
Oh, thank you very much. I think Pan-Africanism was founded on the ideology of socialism. Because when you watch at the socialism, the theory of socialism, believe that if you need to build a society at one, and everybody should work for the goodness and progress of one society, and even the national cake or the resources found within the society should be distributed equally. That was exactly what the ideology of Kwame Nkrumah and others we actually found. So when you watch at places, that is why in Africa, in places like Ghana, when you get there, you must see something that is related to the Kwame Nkrumah's mentality. If you get to places like Zambia, you must see something that is related to Kenneth Kaunda. If you get to places like Zimbabwe, you must see something related to Robert Gabriel Mugabe, though later on he told the line of other things. So if you get to places like Burkina Faso, you must see something related to Thomas Sankara. So when you watch even Senegal, you must see something related to Leopold Senghor. So they contributed positively because they actually first came with the ideology that Africans should have a liberated society, and if we are to be liberated in Africa, then we should have an independent economy. But if we continue keeping our receiving others ideologies and different mentality on how we should control and handle our economic affairs, Africa is definitely not going to develop. So us stable development into Africa today, we actually lay foundation for strong political development. And you watch at it, even when you watch, let us to watch when you talk about the economic development, watch at certain things. Even when it comes to democracy, do you think that the time Africa embraced democracy, was it actually right for us? No. When you watch at places like Europe, in America, wheresoever, they had long-standing leadership before ever the spirit of democracy, liberal democracy could take place. That tells you that if you want to develop as a country, you need to first have a stable democracy. Before ever we had democracy into Europe, before we have democracy into other Western world, they have strong leadership who actually stood for the oneness of the country, lay strong foundation. So when everything was being developed, they started coming down to the wave of democracy and whatsoever thing. So our founding fathers actually play a great role because in the first place, the one-party mentality was not actually meant to underdevelop Africa. It was actually meant to view Africa as a society, have a strong leadership, and all of us should develop at one. But when the white man knew that exactly, what they did, they infected Africa with what they call liberal democracy. And if we are infected with liberal democracy, our mentality of the way of viewing things actually changes. And our forefathers who actually wanted to grip on power, what did they do? They become dictatorial in nature. So our founding fathers were actually good. Watch at Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana. All his mentality was to ensure that Ghana is being developed as a society. When you watch, and that is why my brother rightly said, the independence of Ghana means nothing if the rest of Africa, we are not actually independent. And even when you watch at Algeria, they have Ahmed Bella Ben, who was the first president of Algeria. He personally used to pay money to other African countries to ensure that Africans actually become liberated, because you cannot stand and fight for Africa if other countries are under suppression. They are still under colonial mentality. So the best way that they had wanted to do to develop Africa and to have a strong economic system, for Africa to be a social society or to believe in the theory of socialism, we are all Africans should work for the goal of Africa and to stop the exploitation that Africa should be independent. So the founding fathers' mentalities contributed greatly to still up. In fact, we would not have thought about Pan-Africanism today if our founding fathers had not actually laid that foundation. And a diaspora movement where you see black as an African and related to Africa, you call your fellow who is a black African just because he has that same race like you regard him as a black, and all of those ways we are actually moving in the diaspora. Why do you think Kwame Nkrumah actually had the best name for the Pan-Africanism movement? Because he actually started the movement in Africa, but also have great other people who started it in Europe, who started it in America, but just because we are not based here, they actually acknowledge, but not greatly, because Kwame Nkrumah and others we are in Africa, they move against the wave of this white mentality. So it's a fantastic idea. They did something a lot, and we are still building on that ideology. Without them, we didn't have been discussing Pan-African ideology here.
Thank you so very much, folks in cyberspace. You are watching Focus on Liberia, and Mr. Kelleh, get ready to chime in on the economic contribution of our fathers, the Pan-Africanists. We want to know, because of time, we'll be wrapping up here quickly. Folks, this is Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We have just launched our brand new program here at Focus on Liberia called Roundtable Africa, Mr. Edward Amara, based in Freetown, Sierra Leone, who is a West African correspondent for Focus on Liberia, is the co-host of this program. And also, Mr. Sekou Kelleh, based in Canada, is the host of this show. This show comes on every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, live right here at Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. If you miss this show from the start, you miss it all. I will encourage you to go back when this show ends for you to watch it. You will learn a lot about Pan-Africanism, the history, the fathers, their contribution, and all that. Because of time, we will continue this conversation next Wednesday. But again, we have a few more things to discuss before we leave. Mr. Kelleh, the economic contribution of Pan-Africanists, the fathers of Pan-Africanism. Jump in quickly because of time, make it brief.
Yes. Well, there is a book called Black Africa, the economic, the cultural basis for a federated state. Mm-hmm. The economic and cultural basis for a federated state, written by Sheikh Anta Diop. So in that book, he is a Pan-African. He explained very clearly that yes, Pan-Africanism is built on the idea of socialism, but not Western socialism or textbook socialism that you know. Socialism in the African context, okay, which we don't have the time to explain in great detail. But this is what they said, that Africa, there is no need to go to World Bank and other places looking for economic theory. It's very simple. Industrialization is the only way forward for Africa to come out economically. As long as we do not industrialize, there is no way we can compete with the rest of the market. We can do whatever we want. We can study whatever degree we want. Industrialization is the only way to topple European market and give African jobs and restore our economic pride.
Thank you so very much, folks. As you can see, the conversation is educative, and you can only find it right here at Focus on Liberia again, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia and all things Africa right here on Roundtable Africa, here at Focus on Liberia. And your intelligent hosts and co-hosts have been nailing us with knowledge here. Join us next Wednesday for another edition where we start on the economic contribution of Pan-Africanism, and we didn't even touch the social contribution of the leaders. You don't want to miss it. But gentlemen, we have to conclude. Edward, I see that you are back with us. What is your parting comment to our viewers? You know, this is a brand new program. You're the co-host. You know, you can give a little overview again about what this program is all about and intends to achieve.
I think Africa has actually lost its ideology, and this program we want to enlighten the world, especially the youth, because we hold the future for Africa, and the future is in our hands today. So we really want to rebrand the mentality, at least to inject some vitality into our way of thinking, and for the youth to understand that Africans are viewed as Africans. They are not viewed as Sierra Leoneans. They are not viewed as Liberian. That is why if you are going to be identified into another world or into another continent, with the exception of Africa, they will always call you as an African. And to develop Africa, we need to have a unified system, a codified one, a one that can actually identify us. And we need to have a strong economic system, free of political differences, and we have to have a common ideology because all of us share a common destiny. That was what the founding fathers wanted to do. We want to share ideology and to forget about living the white man ways of life, suffering in the African way, and having a free, independent continent that is free from external control. I thank you, good night, and we hope to ensure that we keep bombarding the program with interesting topics. And I believe that as time goes around, people will definitely join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward Amara, West African correspondent for Focus on Liberia, based in Freetown, Sierra Leone. He is the co-host of this program, Roundtable Africa. Edward, thank you. We always admire the intelligence and brilliance you bring to the conversation. We know your data has been harmonized in our West African region, so you can leave now and save some data. Thank you. We will have you next Wednesday. Those of you who missed it from the start, Edward will be here and you will get a lot from him. Mr. Edward Amara, thank you for joining us. Let's come back to Mr. Kelleh. Close us the idea of having a round table to talk about Africa, to talk Africa economically, politically, socially, how the use of Africa can pick up the baton from our fathers who left this idea of Pan-Africanism that unite us, that make us one group of people. How can we carry these things on? That is the goal of Roundtable Africa. Close us.
Marcus Garvey, in his book, The Opinion and Philosophy of Marcus Garvey, he said, up, you mighty race, you will accomplish what you will. Up, you mighty race, African, you will accomplish what you will. Your will is your power, is the destiny, is what you have to create your destiny. What the founding father of Pan-Africanism have done is to create a vision for Africans, that our destiny is based on our own creation, what we decide to become. Should we remain in the matrix of colonialism, of white men that have divided up into tribes and these little nations, or we want to look at our own future? There are over 1 billion Chinese in one nation. There are over 1 billion Indians in one nation. The European Union is there. The United States of America made of 53 states. Are we going to be seeking refuge in our little tribes, or we are going to come together? And like we did in ancient Egypt 5,000 years ago, where over 42 tribes united and formed the greatest empire of the pharaohs. Can we do that today? And the answer, the founding father of Pan-Africanism are saying, a black man, because of slavery and colonialism, we should hold on to Pan-Africanism idea that fight against exploitation. We should stand for egalitarianism. We should stand for economic justice, to improve. We should not go for elitism, to make few people rich and few people poor. We should go for classless society where majority of our people can enjoy the fruit of their labor. No more oppression. No black nation should go towards oppression and building elite class that will oppress the honor people. So that's Pan-Africanism, and that's the future. All young people should grab books on Pan-Africanism and see what it holds for them.
Thank you so very much. Mr. Sekou Kelleh is the host of this program, Roundtable Africa, and you don't want to miss it every Wednesday at 1 p.m. live right here at Focus on Liberia. Let's read some of your comments before we close. This one is from Kennedy. Thanks, guys. This was very informative and interesting. This one from Bassa Boy Andrews. This will be my best show, and don't miss it yet. Anytime on Wednesday. I mean, if you miss it, you can also go to Focus on Liberia on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and you will be able to watch it. And I will show you another way you can watch our program before we close here. Focus on Liberia. This one is from our CEO. He writes, our versatile and knowledgeable West African correspondent, Edward Amara. Indeed, he is. This is from Mr. Logan. Excellent. And then another one from our CEO here, the great Sekou Kelleh. The man is a fountain of knowledge when it comes to the issue of African consciousness. I can guarantee you that. This one is from Joe Moyo, who is an affiliate here at Focus on Liberia. Joe writes, some say Bladden is the father of Pan-Africanism, but where Dubois holds the mantle as leader of Pan-Africanism. Garvey was an emotional force in Pan-Africanism, but Dubois was an intellectual leader. He had a PhD from Harvard. Garvey was a high school dropout who worked as a printer. It was Dubois who influenced Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere. Garvey was about back to Africa. He wanted a full-scale repatriation of Africans in the diaspora back to Africa. Liberia was to be a key, I think, component, something like that, the way he started. Thank you. Very informative comment from Mr. Joe Moyu, who, for disclosure, is an affiliate here at Focus on Liberia. We have our man based in the Holland. He's writing here. That is the man Thomas, but this is a Facebook name. Comrade, how you doing there? Pan-Africanism is going nowhere. when we are unfit to discuss the issue of fake religions imposed upon us. And I'm in agreement with you there. Religion is a major factor of disorienting Africa from African consciousness. And you can take that from a book. It is true. I need to share this. It is all free to share. It doesn't cost you a dime. Just do it as many times as possible, and we will love you more for that. And this one is from Boy Love 8. Thanks, and thank you for loving it. Folks, before we close, I want to quickly share with you, if you missed any of our program, or this is your first time watching Focus on Liberia, I urge you to go to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that any show that you miss, you will be able to see it. This is Focus on Liberia website. Our website is focusonliberia.net. That is www.focusonliberia.net. If you miss any of our show, just go to the website, focusonliberia.net, where it says here, live shows. You click on it, you will see all of our shows. And if you go to contact us, and if you want to discuss any topic of interest here at Focus on Liberia, this is where you come. On our website, go to contact us. Here you submit your name, your email address, what you want to talk about, and do a little message and hit submit. We will reach out to you effective immediately without delay so that we can bring you to be part of the conversation. Because here at Focus on Liberia, we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Mr. Sekou Kelleh, again, we can't thank you enough. Next Wednesday, we'll be here again, same time, folks, on yet another exciting edition of Roundtable Africa. I'm Anthony C., who facilitated today in this very, very informative discussion. As you can see, Sekou is enjoying himself. Let's do this again. And the song that says, "We are all Liberians," is taking us home. Folks, bye-bye.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our